Okay, with the sad news about Blue and Flint, let's find out what happens to Esker in chapter 31. The orcas pushed the iceberg on, but when they came to the blue ice tunnel again, they left, as soundlessly as they had arrived, and Esker's head filled with images of what she had last seen there. Flint urging her to go on to the last of the groaning splinters, Blue's terrified face as the walrus thrashed close, and the sea swaying red. Fresh tears bloomed, and for a moment Esker felt so numb and empty she couldn't move. Then Balapan leant close to her, and she took a deep breath, laid the frost horn by her feet, and paddled back between the remaining icebergs into the open water. The midday sun was dazzling, but through its glare she could just make out the igloo back on the snowy beach. She didn't have a plan yet, but she hadn't heard her voice echo out over the kingdom, so maybe, just maybe, there was still time for an idea to work itself out. But blowing the frost horn from the stars? She wasn't an inventor like Flint. So how was she going to climb up into the sky? And a tear trailed down her cheek as she thought of Flint and Blue. And then her heart quickened, and back on the beach through the haze of sunlight something was moving. She squinted. Not possible, a voice inside her whispered, and then, please let it be possible. She dug her bow into the water again and again, pushing through the stream of sunlight until she burst through, and there on the beach were two people. A little girl dressed in furs playing with a foxpup on the rocks near the end of the bay, and a boy with a mop of tangled brown hair disappearing inside the igloo. They were alive! Somehow Blue and Flint had survived the walrus attack, and they were waiting for her to return with the frost horn. Esker flung up her arms to get their attention, and then out of the corner of her eye she saw something else. A skin boat was rounding the headland into their bay, and a tusk guard at its helm, and he was just a few metres from the rocks where Blue was cuddling Pebble. Esker opened her mouth to shout out, suddenly forgetting her voice had been stolen, and when no sound came she threw up her hands. But Blue was facing the wrong way, and she couldn't see Esker or the tusk guard approaching. Mind worrying, Esker seized the frost horn and blew as hard as she could. Nothing happened. Would the horn only sound if it was blown from the stars? Balapan pecked at her furs. Stay low, the eagle was saying. Stay hidden. Don't do anything that might draw attention. And Esker steered behind a solitary iceberg, and then she peeked round to scan the beach for Flint. He was inside the igloo, still, and the tusk guard silently pulled up his boat and edged over to the rocks towards Blue. Esker's body stiffened with fear. She was defenceless, no match for the guard and the weapons she saw glinting in his boat. She made to move, anything to try and warn Blue, but then she realised that if the guard saw her too, he'd raise the alarm and there could be more tusks further up the coast, and they'd take them both, and they'd destroy the frost horn, and there would be no hope of beating the Ice Queen. Esker watched in horror as Pebble launched himself at the tusk guard to try and protect Blue, but he was booted into the snow, and the guard clamped a hand over Blue's mouth. Pebble struggled up and ran at the guard again, but then the man simply seized up the foxpup by the snout and dragged both him and Blue towards his skin boat before binding and gagging them. The guard began to row back around the headland, not thinking to check inside the igloo, and though Balapan was pressing all her weight against Esker, trying to hold her back, Esker just couldn't watch Blue and Pebble be taken away. She steered the iceberg into the open and stood up, shouting empty words and waving her hand. Blue's eyes met hers, wide and scared, but the tusk guard was facing the other way, rowing hard along the coast in the direction of the Ice Queen's palace. Confident now that the guard hadn't seen Esker, Balapan soared into the sky after the boat, and the eagle shrieked as she approached the headland, and at the sound of Flint rushed out of the igloo. He saw Esker floating towards him, and then he threw up his hands and cheered, and then he glanced across the beach to where Blue had been playing. He started forward, suddenly realising that his little sister was gone, and then his face paled as he took in the eagle, bulleting after the tail of the skin boat gliding round the headland. No, Flint screamed. Not Blue, and Pebble. But the tusk guard didn't swing his boat round. He didn't even hear the boy's cry because it was lost in the shrieks of the kittiwakes in the wind. The boat disappeared out of sight and Flint tore across the beach, shouting his sister's name again and again. Esker didn't wait for her iceberg to grind ashore. She leapt into the shallows and raced over the snow after her friend. And Flint whirled around. Why didn't you warn me? He clambered onto the rocks that closed the beach into the bay and ducking low peered over the top. Esker grabbed him by the arm and they skidded down into the snow. Then she looked into his eyes, and in the silence that followed she willed her friend to understand. Flint gasped. The Ice Queen has stolen your voice. And then he struggled against Esker's hold. We have to go after them. Blue's in danger. And Esker tightened her grip, and she knew they wouldn't win this way. They had to stay hidden, because blowing the frost horn from the stars was the only way to put an end to the Ice Queen and rescue Blue. Flint brushed away his tears and he listened to the faraway cry of the eagle. Balapan, she'll bring Blue and Pebble back, won't she? Esker nodded. Flint spoke quickly as his thoughts tangled of panic and pain. If Balapan fails, Blue will be made a prisoner like Ma, so the ice queen won't harm her immediately. Not until the midnight sun rises tomorrow. We still have time. The words were spoken as facts, but Flint's voice was wavering. If Balapan returns without Blue, she'll be okay until we go for her with weapons. And a plan, right? He glanced at Esker, and then his shoulders slumped. But if the Ice Queen already has your voice, that means she can use it at any time. We're too late. Esker looked at her feet. I should go after Blue now, Flint said, kicking the rocks. What better plan are we going to come up with? Again Esker held him fast. I never should have left her outside on the beach. And tears sprang into Flint's eyes again, but this time he didn't wipe them away. I should have been guarding her and fighting for her like Tomkin would have done, not hiding in that igloo, inventing. He spat the last words out with disgust and then sat down on the rock, his head in his hands. Esker did nothing for a few minutes. It was hard work to work out what to do when there were no words left, and then she sat down too, and although she wasn't sure whether warriors turned inventors really approved of hugs, she hugged Flint anyway. They sat beneath the cliffs, but the eagle didn't return, and after a while Esker noticed the arm of Flint's fur parka was stained with blood, and she tugged at it and frowned. Walrus blood, not my own, he said. I used my anything knife to kill it after it knocked us off the iceberg. He turned the weapon over in his hands, and Esker noticed the turquoise river gem in the hilt was gone. We would have drowned if I hadn't remembered at the very last moment what the stone contained, he paused. I infused it with a wisp of the south wind, and when I smashed it open and grabbed hold of a loose piece of ice with Blue, the wind blew us safely back to shore. Esker smiled, a smile that was full of pride and respect for her friend. But I'm done with inventing now, Flint muttered. It only ever brings trouble. There was a squawk from the sky, and Balapan glided back to the bay and landed in a tumble of bloodied feathers by their feet. Esker rushed forward and held the bird tight. Her wounds were not serious, and once the eagle preened herself, most of the blood would vanish, but there was no sign of Blue and Pebble. Flint hung his head. My little sister, this is all my fault. Esker stood up and strode towards the igloo because Flint might be done with inventing, but she knew that his ideas were the only thing powerful enough to take her to the stars. It won't work, Flint stammered. I was mad to think it would, and he clambered back up the rocks and scoured the coast for his sister, but she was long gone. We should be going after Blue. Esker carried on walking with Balapan flying alongside her, and the long white tusk raised in her hand. It shone like a slither of moonlight, and it was impossible not to feel its magic, and at the sight of it Flint gasped. You found the legendary Phosphorn, he hurried after Esker, but just because you have it doesn't mean the invention will work. It's useless. Esker ignored him and broke into a run, and then Flint was running too, back towards the igloo. Esker disappeared inside, her heart thumping at what Flint might have made, but what she saw was not what she'd been expecting. Arrows fletched with snow goose feathers to replace the quiver she'd lost in the walrus attack. Esker tried to smile. She was grateful, of course, but how were these arrows going to take her and Flint to the stars? I was just using the leftover snow goose feathers to make you some more arrows, and Flint looked at his feet. The invention is behind the igloo. It's too big to fit inside. Esker hurried outside where Balapan was waiting for her, and there, tucked behind the snow house, looking more glorious than she ever could have imagined, was Flint's latest invention. A vehicle carved entirely out of driftwood, and it balanced on 3 wheels, one at the front, 2 behind, and the hollow scoop of the body where there were 2 seats and a small lever in front, but most splendid of all were the wings. Mounted on wooden rods above the vehicle, giant white wings made from hundreds of snow goose feathers. Flint had gathered in the lost chambers. Esker blinked. How could Flint have done all this since the walrus attack this morning? And as if he could sense her thoughts, Flint said, I worked through the night to get it done. Esker's baffled heart shone because here was a friend who, like Balapan, would never let her down, and as she looked upon Flint's marvellous creation, she felt a stream of memories flood back, and someone else whose loyalty and love blazed just as brightly as this, her pa, Wolftooth, a large man with blue eyes and a gentle face, carrying her on his shoulders when she was very little, wrapping her in an eidered-up throw before a campfire, lifting her across the river's fastest currents. Esker led the memories eddy around her, and then Flint reached into his pocket and drew out a handful of green gems. Solidified glowworm, light, he said quickly. Bottled at midnight during our stay in the lost chambers. Jay helped me when you and Blue were sleeping. Should shine bright when the night closes. And he glanced at the engine, a wooden cylinder stoppered by a stone. Contains the loudest wolf growl ever heard in deep roots, and a bolt of lightning from the bottle we used in the Grey Man yesterday. But even so, there's no guarantee it'll keep us going to the stars. Eska spun around and hugged Flint tighter than ever, and Balapan ruffled her wings in delight. Flint blushed. I called it Woodbird, but I don't know if it'll fly. Eska grinned. Flint has lost his sister and his beloved fox pup. She had lost her voice, but here lay a way to reach the stars. A few chapters left. Not long to reach the stars.